Guatemalan Coffee from Our Farm to Our Mug by Mrs. Racinos. So here's a picture of Mr. Racinos and Mrs. Racinos. We're down in Agua Dulce, Guatemala, where my husband was born and raised. And this picture was taken just a little bit from his house. You can see just a little bit of his sister's house peeking up right back there. Here's our three kids. We've got Felicia on the left, then Ariana and Isaac. This was from last summer in 2019 when we were down there. And here's a picture up above of the village that he's from. It's called Agua Dulce, which means sweet water. It's in the state of Huehuetenango and the country of Guatemala. So his house that he grew up in is right here. That's where his mom raised 11 kids and a few of her grandkids as well. And now Eliar's brother, Mr. Racinos' brother, owns the house. His mom has passed away now. And our coffee land is right in this valley over here. So we get our coffee from our farm from right in that area. Here's the street view of his house that he grew up in. Actually, Mr. Racinos built this building right here with his own hands. It's a little farmacia and tienda, Elenita, it says. And it's his brother now runs a pharmacy out of it and a little store. Mr. Racinos ran kind of like a little 7-Eleven kind of type store out of it right before we were married. And then his mom ran it for several years. And now his brother has his business in it. So people come up to the window right here. There's just a little opening. They'll tell Mr. Racinos' brother what they want, and he'll go get it and then exchange it out the window for the money, for the quetzales. There's the driveway up to the house up there. There's gates here to keep things locked in at night so that nobody can take anything. You're just walking down the street. You can see the tienda right there, right in the front of the house, their property. And another view from above, again of the town looking down below. Here's our land again for our coffee farm. And then looking out this way is towards Mexico, the border of Mexico. I was trying to see, I think it's this line that runs right along there. So on this side is all Guatemala, and over in this area is the country of Mexico. So we're right on the border. Here's some coffee plants up close. These are paths that go to different houses. Pretty much the houses are just right in the middle of these coffee plants. So walk down the path and there'll be a house, and then pretty much every part of the town that can have a coffee plant will have one. Here's the coffee beans. The red ones are ripe. Those are ready to be picked. There's Mr. Racinos checking on some of his coffee. And there's a picture of his brother. He manages the farm while we're living up here. Make sure things are being tended to and the harvest is happening when it's supposed to. Make sure the workers get paid, all of that. So the type of coffee plant that we have is called Arabica, and it's got a really nice flavor to it. The caffeine isn't as strong as like if you go to Starbucks and get a cup of their espresso. That one uses Robusto beans. It's a different type of coffee plant that produces a lot of beans at lots of different times of the year. It's a much cheaper type of bean. The Arabica beans only get harvested once a year. They don't produce as many beans. So it's a little bit more expensive coffee, but has a really nice flavor to it. And that's the kind we have. Here's the kids a few years ago when we were there, and they're in the nursery area where the baby coffee plants are being grown. So we start with the plants there and until they get strong enough to be placed out on the farm with all the other big plants. Banana trees are used to provide some shade. The sun is pretty strong a lot of the times during the day, and so there's tall trees like banana trees that have nice big leaves that can provide some shade. These are a couple of our workers that work all year long in our coffee fields, making sure everything's taken care of. They'll clear out weeds and trim the branches and whatever needs to happen. And then we'll have more workers that come during the harvest that will pick all the beans. But these guys we employ the whole year. And when we went last time, we brought them some new boots and clothes, and we bought them this water filter to take up to their house. So we brought them into Eliar's brother's kitchen here to show them how to use it. It just hooked right up to the faucet, and drinking water came right out because the water that comes out of the faucet comes straight out of a stream. So it's not clean enough to just pour into a cup of water and drink. In the house that these guys live in, they have to boil the water for about 20 minutes before they can even use it for drinking or cooking or anything. So they can never go up to the sink and get just a cold cup of water when they're thirsty. They need to either buy filtered water or boil it and let it cool. So we brought them this little filter that they can just hook right up to a water source and have pure, clean drinking water right away. So a lot of the coffee pickers, especially seasonal workers, they'll come and live in housing that just looks like this. It's just some pieces of metal put together. One family might be in this area right here, then another family right in here, and another family down in this end. So there's a lot of poverty. It doesn't pay hardly any money when you're just picking coffee. And so we'll see buildings like this on different people's land that they'll just have for seasonal workers to come. This family that Ariana's talking to, they were living in this while we were down there. And this is their water source right out here. There's just what's called a pila with, again, water just coming up from the river connected to a hose and coming out there. And that's what they have available to them. You can see some clothes hanging up here. So Mr. Racinos and I are working hard to make sure that our workers are not living in houses that are like this, that they have a little bit nicer place to stay in. And we also are working hard so that kids like this cutie will be able to go to school and not have to grow up just picking coffee. Maybe can go live in the city and study something else when he grows up. So in this picture, this is Mr. Racinos' dad. He owns this land down here, which has the area that we wash the coffee in. So the pickers go up during the harvest. They pick big 100-pound sacks of coffee. They bring it down to this area. And the first thing that needs to happen is it needs to get washed. So there's a big, huge tub in this part back here, this cemented part. So the pickers climb up. This is all coffee land up here in the back of this picture on this cliff. So they climb up there and pick 100 pounds, put it on their backs, carry it down here, down to this house down here in this patio to wash it. So here Mr. Racinos is washing some coffee. It's gone through the big tub and now it's coming down through this area. And he's paddling through it to get the outer shell, that red part, the cherry, removed from the coffee beans. So it soaks and then washes off. And then after you wash it, you put it out on the patio like this and let it dry in the sun. And you keep raking it, turning it over for a day or 2, 3 days until it's nice and dry. And it's this light tan color then. So then we scoop it up after it's all dried up and we put it in some big sacks. that look like this. And then we either sell it like that to somebody who sells coffee to companies like Starbucks or Dutch Brothers or anything like that, and it gets mixed in with other coffee from other farms, or some of it we ship up to ourselves. And so we have this sack in our home office here. I opened it up this morning and took a picture. Here's some coffee beans that haven't been roasted yet. They're just waiting for us to roast them. So then Mr. Racinos takes some of it over to a big roaster. We weren't a roaster, and he'll spend a few hours roasting it. It's like a kind of like an air popper, like popcorn. It's kind of how it gets roasted. So it's with hot air, gets turned a lot to try and evenly toast it, and then it comes out when it's at the right temperature. So we roast it to different temperatures depending on what people like to drink. So when it's a medium roast, it's a little bit lighter color and it hasn't been cooked as hot a temperature, has a little bit sweeter flavor to it. This darker one, some people like the darker, stronger flavor of the coffee, and so we'll also roast some of it to that darker color. So then we're ready to bag it up. It gets weighed to make sure that we put the exact same amount of coffee into every single bag. So we weigh it, and we can either put it in the bag like that, or we can put it in a coffee grinder like this and have it get ground and put in the bag like that. So one of my jobs is to print the labels. So I print all the labels that go on the bags on the front and the back, and then we seal the bag in this machine. It gets real hot and it seals it up, and then when the customer gets it, they can pull this tab and open it. That's one way we sell the coffee. Here's another way. We also make these little pods that go into like Keurigs or K-Cup machines. So some of the coffee we put into those using this machine. And then people can take the coffee, there it is, it's been ground, and they can take it and put it in their coffee machine, roast it, pour themselves a cup of coffee. And which is exactly what I did this morning. And there I am drinking my cup of coffee. It's come all the way from our farm, grew up from a baby plant. It went then to the bigger farm, grew up into an adult plant, had some ripe berries that were picked, those were washed, and the coffee beans were then shipped up to the U.S. where Mr. Racinos roasted it and ground it, and we put it in our coffee machine, and I made myself a cup of coffee.